Welcome to the Fallon Forum. We are broadcasting today, of course, from the Skywalk, from the Webcast One studio in the Skywalk across from Palmer's Deli. Big day here in Des Moines, of course, because it is RAGBRAI, and there's about, 20,000 bikes coming through. My bike has plenty of company today, although these are the hardcore types that do 50 to 80 miles at a pop. My bike is not used to quite that much mileage. But anyway, great to have all the folks rolling into town here. I want to remind folks that if you're listening to this program on KHOI 89.1 out of Ames or on KPVL out of Postville, this is a rebroadcast of Tuesday's conversation. You can always hear the show live on the Fallon Forum website, and that's fallonforum.com. And if you are listening live and you'd like to call in, the number to call is 238. Sorry, I'll get it. 244. There we go. 244-0077. 244-0077. I just put it in my mind that it sounds like the code name for some secret agent, and then I remember what it is. 244-0077. And if you'd like to call in today, if you are listening live and you'd like to call in today, you are of course most welcome to do so. We're going to talk about the upcoming immigration rally here in Des Moines, but also about the tragic situation in Texas with a dramatic increase in the number of immigrants who are dying as they try to cross the border. It's sad on a number of levels. This is just in USA Today story this week coming out. Body count continues to increase on Texas border. It's something we don't have to deal with in Iowa here, but a lot of these border states have issues, and I'm not convinced at all that the immigration reform bill being proposed is going to make the situation much better. Again, it's going to be probably good news for many of the 12 million immigrants currently here without documentation. But in the big scheme of things, with the increased activity they want to encourage along the border, I mean, we're talking about 20,000 more agents patrolling the border. We're talking about more drones. Yeah, you know how I feel about drones, helicopters, and other types of technology. And bear that in mind as we talk a little bit more about the problem itself. Okay, so Rolando Gutierrez, who is a deputy along the Texas border. He's a deputy with the Brooks County Sheriff's Department in southern Texas. And he goes out several times a week. And they get calls frequently. It's disturbing how frequent recently about dead bodies being found in the county. These are bodies that are believed to be, or probably, of illegal immigrants who are crossing into the U.S. from somewhere in Mexico. And in some cases, they appear to be killed, I don't know, by smugglers, by coyotes, and not coyote the animal, but the smuggler, the human trafficker, or maybe are they killed by vigilantes? I don't know. The biggest, probably the most likely reason they die trying to cross is that they are forced to do so in the most unfriendly areas, climatically, geographically, in rough terrain. And they struggle with the heat. They run out of food, more importantly, out of water. And the numbers of immigrants thus dying is rising at a very serious rate. Last year, deputies in Brooks County retrieved the bodies of 129 illegal immigrants just in this one county. They retrieved 129 bodies last year, and that's up from that's an increase of about 100% from the previous year, from 2011, and the most ever recorded in the county. Now, one reason this is a disturbing trend to me and to others who are following the situation is that the actual number of people trying to enter the country illegally is down. There are less people trying to come to the U.S. from Mexico and Central America. it's declining. It's been declining for a while, and yet the number of deaths is increasing. And so the grave concern about the immigration reform bill is that the addition of 20,000 more agents patrolling the border, the addition of drones, helicopters, other types of technology is only going to force the immigrants into even more treacherous areas, trying to get through with even less on their backs. It's disturbing all around, and it requires obviously a much more comprehensive solution than just sticking more patrols and more border patrol folks along the frontier. It is going to require a global, or at least a regional approach to trying to create a better world for everybody. Really, would you flee a beautiful climate for the most part in Mexico, Central America? Would you leave that behind for the harsh winters we have here, and for that matter, the harsh summers? I mean, our summers here. I was in southern Mexico once, visiting my daughter in school there, in warmer weather. It was downright nice. It was very nice. They don't get the kind of crazy heat we have here with humidity. Oh, in some places they do, but my point is, would you leave your home and your family and everything that was familiar and comfortable and come to a foreign land unless you really, really had to? And that's what I think a lot of Americans fail to grasp. These people aren't coming here because they want to, quote, take our jobs. They're coming here because they have no options. And, clearly, a lot of the burden of addressing this problem lies with the Mexican government. And I give you, there's no doubt about it, the Mexican government really is not that interested in fixing this problem, because the amount of money shipped back to Mexico from illegal workers is a huge part of that country's economy. Still, it's wrong. You shouldn't have a situation where people have to flee. The disparity in wealth in Mexico is huge, but certainly we cannot overlook the U.S. policies, most recently NAFTA and some of the other so-called free trade agreements, which have been bad for small farmers here in America, in the U.S., are even worse for farmers in Mexico. And thus you see a tremendous amount of farmers who used to raise corn for a living, compliments of Iowa corn being shipped, heavily subsidized Iowa corn being shipped to Mexico. They lose their ability to make a living growing corn, and they move to the city. And Mexico City, I believe, maybe you can look it up for me, Maddie, but I believe Mexico City now has a population of around 25 million people. You check that for me, which I think it's about 25 million people, which is astounding. I mean, that's 8 Iowas in one city. 8 Iowas in one city. It's astounding. So
the number I'm getting is 8.851 million.
Sorry?
The number that I'm getting, 8.85 million. Yep.
I suppose I should put my headset on so I can hear what Maddie's telling me. Yes?
That would help. 8.851 million is the population.
That's got to be wrong. It's way more than that.
I will check again.
Okay. Anyway, it's tragic what's happening, and we have to bear some of the responsibility. Population management. I know people don't like the word population control, so consider it management. I mean, at some point you've got to reconcile your growth, your physical human growth, with the reality of how many resources you have, how much water, how much food capacity do you have, how much housing, how much employment. I mean, the planet is not getting bigger. The landmass on planet Earth is not getting bigger. Our resources, in fact, are not getting more extensive. They're becoming more constrained. We are declining in resources. So logically, the population should shift to accommodate that.
21 million.
I told you so.
And it's funny because the graph that I found is from the United States Census Bureau.
Yeah. That is a curiosity. The United States Census Bureau has a count on the population of Mexico City.
An incorrect one.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Oh, the first one was The 8 million one.
Yeah, that was the one that was from the Census Bureau.
Okay. Well, okay. Well,
Which
I don't know
makes
why
it
they have
funnier.
that anyhow, but yeah. Okay. So 21 million. That sounds about right, and that's huge. That's again 7 Iowas in one city, and a lot of that migration has happened because of our policies. And it's not just our economic policies. Too, over the years, we have had a foreign policy in Central America that has been decried by many human rights organizations. And people who have been paying attention to what we did in El Salvador, in Guatemala, in Nicaragua, in Chile, in Argentina, other places. I mean, the policies that we have employed in those countries are hideous. And a lot of people don't want to admit that our country would do that. But the problem is, of course, that we have been, our government in so many cases, politicians have been so tied to corporate interests that when those corporate interests saw their interests threatened in Latin America, they called on government to help out. And a great case in point is Guatemala, which back in the 1950s had elected a government that was very friendly to the needs of the people, and in fact had begun to nationalize some of the land that had been wrongfully controlled by big fruit interests such as United Fruit. I mean, think Guatemala, think bananas. Bananas are big business. And the Banana Corporation, United Fruit, was threatened by this attempt to kind of bring more land back into the hands of poor Guatemalan peasants. And so the folks at United Fruit called on the Dulles brothers and the CIA to come in and fix the problem. And they fixed the problem by deposing the duly elected president, installing a puppet dictator, and in the process, over the course of a couple decades, killing. I think the word they chose to use was disappearing. They disappeared. Estimates are between 30 and 100,000 people. Again, it's a horrible chapter in our history, and someday we will come to embrace that and hopefully apologize for it. But that is tied in with it. I mean, you cannot separate those policies of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s even, and some of this even continues today. You cannot separate those policies from our immigration problem. And we have to begin to take responsibility for this and to look at it in a comprehensive way. And we are not doing that. We are just not doing that, and it is very unfortunate because so many lives are lost. So many people are forced to flee their homes and their countries. And, this is a conversation about immigration is always very personal for me because I am the product of immigrant family. Not on my mother's side. My mother's side could probably go back to the Mayflower. That actually is not an exaggeration. They could probably go back to the Mayflower. But on my dad's side, my grandparents came over from Ireland. And again, I mean, how many people listening to this program love the idea of a vacation in Ireland? Everybody wants to go to Ireland for the pubs, for the beautiful green countryside, for the wonderful hospitality. There's so many reasons why people love to go to Ireland. And my dad tells a story about standing on the hills of Donegal up in the northwest corner of Ireland, looking out over the ocean with my grandmother, who had again fled Ireland in about 1922, right about the time of the War of Independence and Civil War. And she had fled. And my dad, and then when transatlantic flights started happening back to Shannon Airport, she would go back every year. My dad went with her. This is about 1966, and he looks out at the hills. He looks at the green fields. He looks at the beautiful ocean. He says, "How could anybody leave such a beautiful country?" And she looked at him and said, "When you're hungry, it's easy." And so that's the crux of the problem. Now, Ireland may not be as sunny and warm as Latin America, Mexico, but it's in its own right. It's a beautiful, damp paradise. It really is. It's a fantastic country. I've been there 22 times. It's still my second home. And knowing that my grandparents came here not because they didn't love their country, not because they wouldn't have rather have stayed, but because they had no option if they wanted to eat. And eating is really not an option. It's kind of a requirement. If you want to live, you eat. Again, there was the war going on, and that's kind of the recipe for emigration. People leave their countries because of war, because of famine, because of economic conditions. Usually, you like to bloom where you're planted. And when that doesn't happen, something's wrong. And in this case, something was terribly wrong. And again, there are more Irish immigrating out of there are more Irish living elsewhere in the world. People of Irish descent living elsewhere in the world than there are in Ireland even today. I'm not sure if that's the same for Mexico, but I really do hope that we begin to take this problem more holistically and not just not demonize immigrants as, quote, coming here to take our jobs, but start to look at the reasons why they do this and start to think about how horrible it must be to be a young man or young woman, or for that matter, a middle-aged man or middle-aged woman trying to get to this country. Maybe you're not even trying to get here to work. Maybe you're trying to get here because that's where your loved one is. That's where your family members are. Maybe you're coming here because you have you are so, you're missing people in your life that are so important to you. And you can't just come to the bus terminal in El Paso. You can't just fly into the airport. You've got to do it subversively. You've got to sneak across the border in extremely harsh conditions. So harsh that, again, last year, 129 bodies were picked up just in one Texas county. And again, so far this year, deputies have found 39 bodies in that county, 39 dead immigrant bodies in that county. And that actually is ahead of last year's pace because most of those bodies tend to be found in July, August, and September. So, again, even though the number of immigrants is in decline, the number of people immigrating here, coming here illegally, is in decline, the trend continues and the deaths are mounting. So I hope we can do something about this. And I hope when this immigration bill is discussed, it's not just a matter of demonizing these people who are really no different than you and I. You and I would also flee somewhere else if we weren't able to feed our families or ourselves. And you know it. All right, let's go to our phone lines, 515-244-0077 or toll free. It's 855-244-0077. And you're welcome to contact me by email as well. It's fallonforum@gmail.com. Let's go to, it's Frank from Des Moines, everybody's favorite caller. Frank, how are you?
Well, hello, Ed. So as not to yell at anybody, I'll try not to raise my voice.
Well, you know what? It's not just my audience that would appreciate that, but probably Maddie as well.
Okay. Well, listen, a couple of things. I mean, there's only 90 million people in Mexico. Well, why don't we just let them all in? Why don't we annex the country? Do something, because apparently what we're doing isn't working.
Well, Frank, that's actually very consistent with what the conservative Cato Institute recommends. They believe in the free flow of goods, and they also believe in the free flow of labor. So if all 90 million Mexicans want to come here, that's fine with the conservative Cato Institute. And is it fine with you?
We would have to make them part of the United States. So we would have, money could fund into Mexico to build the highway system, the structure system that they need, and we would obviously have access to their resources. I mean, it would be a two-way street, but obviously I think it would be a real point to make Mexico the 51st state of the Union.
Well, it sounds similar to what happened back in the 90s with West and East Germany, and that actually panned out pretty good, especially for East Germany. So now, Frank, let me ask you: is that a serious proposal?
Yes,
or are you tweaking me?
I'm serious.
You're serious
because this is not working. What we got going on is not working.
Frank, we agree on something. It is not working. I totally agree, and I don't. Your solution is more radical than anything I have ever proposed, or possibly more radical than anything anyone I've heard ever propose.
Well, it would. We could guard. I don't know what the little peninsula between North America and South America is, but it'd be a whole lot easier to guard that border than the 1,300-mile border we're guarding.
Well, so you're not talking about just making Mexico the 51st state. You want to include
no.
Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Belize, everything else.
I'm talking about everything down to the tip of South America.
Okay. So the Panama Canal will be our southern border?
That would be our border we would have to guard. And then we could relieve all them 1,300 miles worth of border. We could alleviate the cost and the expense of that. It would save this country a ton of money. And they're coming anyway.
Frank, I'm going to give you I've never done this before, Frank. I'm going to give you an A+ on creativity today.
Well, I should hope so.
Right,
your most faithful, long-time caller. I should hope so.
So let me process this a bit more with you. Okay, so presuming that the governments of all of those countries, and we're talking probably about 10 countries, would want to be the 51st state, and that's a big if right there, because if you're Guatemalan, if you're Mayan, you probably want to retain your Mayan heritage in a smaller governmental unit. Maybe not.
Even if those smaller ones don't want to participate, if we get the largest part of it, that's going to eliminate. Look, we've got a couple of problems, Ed, we're facing. Number one, we're facing this drug trade that is just, we're losing the battle, okay? They're digging tunnels under the border. They're sneaking this stuff across the border. If we get down in there, we bolster their police system. Obviously, with funds and stuff, we get everybody on the same page. Then the drug trade from Mexico is going to end.
Well, here's where I part company with you. My solution would not be to bolster the drug war. It would be to legalize the stuff.
Well,
I mean, why not? We've done it with alcohol. We've done it with cigarettes.
Well, Ed, listen,
go ahead, do it with drugs.
I don't want to get off on a total different subject, but I hear a common theme among people who recreationally want to use drugs, and that is that of the purity and how it's cut, and that's what makes it so dangerous. Well, prescription drugs is about as pure as you can get, and you see the problem that we have with prescription drugs. It's an epidemic.
Right.
The people who are hooked and having a problem with prescription drugs.
But at least we don't have crime for the most part associated with prescription drugs like we do with illegal drugs.
We don't?
Not to the extent. I mean, gosh, we don't have towns like Ciudad Juarez where we have tens of thousands of people.
Well,
how many people are killed there?
Yeah, sure. We don't have drug cartels, but people are having personal problems being hooked and addicted to prescription drugs,
and that is sad and needs to be addressed. I think you eliminate the street crime.
Okay, let me give you my plan here, Ed. We don't decriminalize drugs, but we take the drugs out of the prison system and we mandatorily start putting people in drug rehab. We get people out of the penitentiary system, which alleviates the pressure on the penal system, and we stop drugs because we infiltrate Mexico, and we're part of Mexico. Mexico's the 51st state of the Union, so we stop that drug trade going back and forth across the border. There's a whole bunch of birds that can be killed with one stone here.
If you prefer my metaphor, we can feed a whole bunch of birds with one stone.
Sure, exactly.
So, again, just a geography lesson, though, Frank. You said just annex the big ones. Well, I mean, as you go down toward that very, very thin strip of land in Panama, you've only got one country. You've got countries that span that strip of land. Well,
those people, if Mexico went, I would think those people would gladly follow suit, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I don't know. I mean, but do you really think the U.S. wants that?
I don't see where it would hurt either country. I think it would. I think it would be a benefit to both countries.
Frank, I think you should enter the U.S. Senate race here in Iowa on that platform. I think that would be a fascinating conversation. I think you might generate a lot of support. Again, I'm not signing on to the Frank from Des Moines for Congress or for Senate campaign, but I think it's an intriguing conversation.
Well, they're coming here anyway. We can't stop them. They need the work. The employers need the help. Mm-hmm. Their wages would obviously go up if they was part of the United States, because then they would be, they would get minimum wage at minimum.
And we would collect taxes, Social Security, that sort of thing.
We would collect taxes, Social Security off of them, but the way it's going on now, it's not a benefit to either one of us, because we're spending so much of our national resources to guard them from coming in, and they're just coming in around us like we have a porous border. They're just coming in anyway, so I don't see any solution but to make them the 51st state of the United States.
Frank, I am beyond intrigued by your proposal. Again, I'm not saying it's a great idea. I'm saying it's an intriguing idea. And I'm also extremely impressed that you somehow never tied it in with either gay marriage or abortion.
Well, give me a chance.
No, I'm not. We're going to a break. Frank from Des Moines, thank you for thinking outside of the box. Always encouraged when people are willing to do that.
All right.
All right, thanks. Thank you. Folks, we got to take a short break here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Governor Branstad seems to be digging his hole even deeper, especially when it comes to Speedgate and Orascam. Tom Vilsack weighs in on the food and Farm Bill, the food stamp program, the SNAP program, and the Farm Bill. He has got some, I think, interesting comments to make that I will share with you. There are some Iowans heading out to the west of the U.S. to battle firefighters, which apparently, despite some rain, seem to be reigniting. And we're also going to talk about, in a new beat on learning, we're going to talk about we think of the U.S. Congress, we think of Republicans in Congress as being very much anti-tax. They run on the anti-tax platform. Well, apparently they're okay with taxing, wait for it, students. Yeah, students. Those kids who get out of, those schleps who get out of college with 150 or 50,000 or more in debt. Yeah, they can afford a tax on that student loan. We're going to talk about that when we come back in a few minutes on the Fallon Forum. I do want to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, also Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action. And I want to thank Gateway Marketing Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show. Gateway Market is at 20th and Woodland in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. And they are, of course, not just a grocery store. They're also a great place for breakfast, lunch, or supper. I want to thank the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit as well. We've been talking about immigration and immigration reform this segment of the show. The IES, the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit, is coming up on November 9th, and that's a great opportunity to learn how to start and manage your business. I also want to thank Diana's Wedding Cakes out of Newton. And I want to thank Community CPA and Associates, a great accounting firm that's now the 10th largest in the state. I want to thank Hawk Restaurant, where 90% of the food you eat will come from local farms and local producers. And I want to thank Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering. Tally's is at 2712 Beaver. Again, great food, also great places to dine this time of the year. Rooftop patio, seating on the street, wonderful stuff. Anyway, and I also want to thank Story County Veterinary Clinic and my friend Kim Holding for providing excellent veterinary care to my critters, yours, and a lot of other critters here in central Iowa. We'll be back in a few minutes, and again, thank you, James Taylor, for making our lives a little bit better, a little bit brighter. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Real Estate Concept Studios. This is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going, man.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to the Fallon Forum. You're welcome to participate in this conversation at 244-0077, 244-0077. And I want to remind people of on the Fallon Forum website, we have lots of goodies for you. Yes, we have goodies like you can listen live to the show. We have a place where you can donate to help make this show possible. We also have a list of events that are of interest happening in and around Iowa, including a rally coming up this weekend at the state capitol. This is a rally relevant to the immigration reform issue. And it looks like somehow they didn't quite get into the website, but yeah, we'll put that up later to make sure you know about it. But it's happening at 2 o'clock at the state capitol to kind of get people thinking about the immigration reform issue. All right, I got a lot of other ground to cover today, and let's hope I can do this expeditiously because there's a lot to say. And again, you're welcome to chime in at any point at 244-0077. Governor Branstad, I don't know if he's digging himself a hole, and he just seems to want to keep digging. And I had a friend today write and say, well, let's get him a bigger shovel. But it's problematic for the guy. I mean, this whole Speedgate thing, when you think about all the big issues affecting our state, maybe the governor doing 90 miles an hour doesn't seem that big, but it really grabbed the public consciousness. And it's not just Iowa news anymore. This is news across the country. There are people talking about this all over the country. And obviously it matters most to Branstad what people in Iowa are saying. And the problem is, of course, that it seems as if he thinks he is above the law. And, there are ways that this probably could have been dealt with, just a straight up apology. Instead of firing the guy that blew the whistle on you, maybe like saying, okay, thanks for doing your job. Now let's go back and let's not let this happen again. Not letting it happen again by not speeding anymore, leaving enough time in your schedule where you don't have to go 84 miles an hour to get to the next meeting, whether it be a constituent meeting or a fundraising meeting. So the governor, I think, could have handled this a heck of a lot better. And it surprises me that he hasn't, because he is good at politics. I mean, you don't get to be governor 5 terms and not be good at politics. He's good at that stuff. The verdict is out, I think, on whether or not he's good at governing. But clearly there's pretty much agreement that he's good at politics. So why make some of these decisions that do not seem to be very good politically, like firing the guy and only calling more attention to him? And now what's going to happen? He's filing a lawsuit. Yeah, Larry Hedlund, the DCI agent and basically the way he blew the whistle on this is he said, he kind of apologized to his supervisor saying, I didn't really do my part in trying to uphold the law here. I mean, the law is that everybody's supposed to obey the speed limit. And when the trooper who was called to track down the Tahoe going a, quote, hard 90, found out that it was the governor's vehicle, he backed off. And Hedlund feels that he should have said, no, you shouldn't back off. You need to treat him just like everybody else would be treated. And he didn't do that. And he was apologizing for that. And for that, he gets fired. I mean, the other reasons given in the Public Safety Department's Department of Public Safety's report, they seem very questionable. It just doesn't, it isn't adding up. The detail is not there. You can nuance it in lots of different ways. The bottom line is, and I think the Fort Dodge Messenger just nailed this, I believe. Fort Dodge Messenger editorial, they write how the Department of Public Safety claims that Hedlund, quote, did not receive discipline as a result of his complaint of Branstad's speeding Tahoe. And yet he was fired. He was suspended, of course, 2 days after he registered that complaint. Hedlund is also based in Fort Dodge, so the Messenger has a particular interest in this case. The governor addressed the situation on Thursday, and again, I think somebody who likes the governor can take away the shovel that he's using to dig his hole deeper and deeper. For example, on Thursday, he contended that Hedlund's firing was related to his complaint. He's insisting on that. And again, people looking at this thinking, is unrelated to the complaint. People looking at it are thinking, sure, it's got to be related. Branstad says that the Department of Public Safety felt that the action was necessary, and this is great, for, quote, morale and for safety and the well-being of the department. Okay, so wait a minute. They had to fire a 25-year veteran, the Division of Criminal Investigation. That's in the Department of Public Safety. They had to fire him for the, quote, morale and safety and well-being of the department. I like what the Fort Dodge Messenger does with this. They write, it might seem less hypocritical if the governor or the Department of Public Safety officials had, at any point previously, made a statement regarding the safety of the public when a non-emergency vehicle is allowed to zip down the highway at 84 miles per hour with impunity. All right. This is not going to go away. This is not going to go away, and the governor is not doing anything to help it go away. He's demanding information from the lawyer who is now representing Hedlund. And again, because Hedlund got fired, now we've got a lawsuit. This is going to continue to be in the news for who knows how long, possibly right up to the 2014 election. Who knows? But the other thing it's doing is helping to highlight some of the other shortcomings in Governor Branstad's operations as governor. For example, ORSCOM, or as it's sometimes called, ORSCOM, the tax credits. Of course, the Department of Economic Development, actually now it's called the Iowa Economic Development Authority, which used to be a truly public agency, a division of state government, was, through an act that both Democrats and Republicans were complicit, was essentially privatized. It's still a public entity of sorts, but it's a quasi-public private entity that can get away with a lot of things that it couldn't as a public entity. And of course, they approved another $25 million for this Egyptian fertilizer company, a total of $82.5 million from the state. Again, not including all the other money from other tax sources. Branstad used this again. I think this might have been also on Thursday. Oh no, this was Friday. Friday, he says he did not push for. Okay, let me back up. Branstad blamed the need for this additional $25 million tax credit. He said the reason we had to do that, it's not my fault. We had to do that because the legislature failed to enact his proposed reduction in the corporate income tax. I would love to have my income tax reduced by 12%. I would love that. My income taxes, it's a problem. It is. As a small business owner, and maybe if you are also a small business owner, you can relate. It is hard to keep up with all the expenses that government nickels and dimes you with. I would think that's something that we folks on the left and right would agree on. And maybe we would also disagree that corporations would need a 12% cut. And that doesn't include just your mom and pop businesses. It includes the big out-of-state corporations that come here that hardly need a tax cut. So Branstad says, he goes on to say that he did not push for a corporate income tax reduction this year because, this is great, because of opposition by State Senator Joe Bolcom. Well, we thought the governor was the most powerful politician in the state, or we thought it might be Mike Gronstall, but now we know it's Joe Bolcom. Bolcom, congratulations on your promotion. So last week, Bolcom and State Senator Steve Sodders criticized Branstad's letter to ORSCOM, basically the letter that kind of put the state on the hook for $25 million more. Bolcom criticized that as saying it makes the worst economic development deal in the state's history even worse. I like that. That pretty much sums it up. But in today's Des Moines Register alone, you've got 5 different articles that talk about the various parts of Branstad's empire that seem to be crumbling, and various ways in which he just seems to be making the problem worse. There were already people were saying, the huge amount of money given to ORSCOM was a bad idea, and now he makes it worse by committing another $25 million and basically saying his hands were tied. It's the legislature's fault. In particular, the all-powerful, the most powerful lawmaker in the state now, Joe Bolcom. Again, Bolcom, congratulations. An interesting endorsement. Someone else writes, and again, the thing about Speedgate, it keeps giving people more reasons why they want to point out their concerns about Branstad. Richard Schrad of Marshalltown writes, and again, he should know, he's in Marshalltown. That's where the Iowa Veterans Home is. And he's reminding us that a number of months ago, there was credible evidence of bullying and other serious charges against the commandant at the Iowa Veterans Home. And those were brought into the public attention. And this man and others feel that veterans at the home were and are still being negatively affected by those actions. So In light of this, the writer says, common sense dictated that Governor Branstad would put the commandant on paid administrative leave, pending the outcome of an independent investigation. So Branstad refused to do that. And it's fascinating that he has such different standards for example, Larry Hedlund, the guy who blew the whistle on him speeding, boom, gone out the door in 2 days. Or for that matter, Chris Godfrey, the public employee who is openly gay and refused to step down when Branstad kind of said, I want to put one of my chosen few in your place. So Branstad, again, refused to relieve the commandant despite grave concerns about him. And legislators and newspapers called for that action to be taken. Now, feeling pushed, Branstad stubbornly refused, and instead, this is what he does. He politicized the issue. It's what he did with Orscom. Instead of saying, yeah, I made a mistake with that letter, or this is why this is needed, he politicizes it. He blames Joe Bolcom and Steve Sodders. So, no, and the letter writer goes on to say, more recently, when caught in his state vehicle going a hard 90, he claimed he was not aware that he's not a backseat driver. In both situations, are these indications of ego and self-interest over public interest, service, and responsibility? Arrogance is not acceptable, neglecting veterans is not acceptable, and assuming Iowans will swallow anything is a mistake. I think, I don't see this going away. Branstad has long been viewed as invincible. And again, I'm not getting involved in this election. I'm just trying to talk about what I see happening. Again, on the Democratic side, we have 3 candidates that are very, very little known statewide. I mean, Bob Kraus is the only one of the 3 that has ran for statewide office. Jack Hatch at one point ran for the U.S. Congress, but that was so long ago that doesn't register much anymore. He and State Representative Tyler Olson are only minimally known outside of their districts. That will probably change over time. I don't think that should worry any of them. You remember there was a very obscure state senator by the name of Vilsack who actually was down in the polls against the better-known Jim Ross Lightfoot years ago by over 20%, who went on to win. So people should assume nothing. And I guess maybe the most telling thing right now this week is the new poll out showing that the percentage of Iowans who feel Governor Branstad should run for another term is at 37%. That is information that his handlers should be looking at very carefully. And again, I think if they really want him to have a shot at winning, they better take that shovel away and try to keep him from digging his hole any deeper. Okay, speaking of Tom Vilsack, and no secrets here, folks. Folks know that Tom Vilsack and I have a lot of disagreements. We've had a lot of conflicts over the year. When I was in the House and he was governor, we had some. Someday I will relate to you some of the conflicts we had, but I'm not going to talk about that today. I want to talk about an area of common interest. I'm a huge believer in the food stamp program because it not only provides money for people to eat and for their kids to eat. It's a good program for farmers. It's a good program for small businesses. Again, you don't want to get to the point where people are dependent upon that as a way of life. And if you look at the research of the demographics, that's not the case. I mean, you've got people like Steve King who say things like, I heard of somebody who used food stamps to get a tattoo. Or I heard of somebody who used food stamps to bail themselves out of jail. Okay, that's not what I'd call credible research. And if there are problems, then let's do something about it. The truth is, the food stamp problem, the problem of fraud in the food stamp program, again, now it's called SNAP, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. The incidence of fraud in SNAP was at about 3.8%. Well, I mean, I'm often a critic of government, but I will say in this sense, government must be doing something right because the incidence of fraud is now down to 1%. So, well, Steve King would like to throw the baby out with the bathwater. He'd like to axe the program by $20 billion. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I cannot believe the number of people who would suffer badly if that were to happen. Most people in office get that. Tom Vilsack certainly gets that. And he said recently at a meeting in Ames just yesterday, He said that the move by the Republican House to split off the debate over food stamps is misguided. And of course, the Farm Bill came up for a vote, and it failed largely because of the cuts to the food stamp program. So what do the House Republicans do? Well, they eliminate the food stamp program from it altogether and just pass the Farm Bill, knowing that folks in farm states will have to vote for it. So they, barely pass it, but only with the farm subsidy provision. And it fascinates me that House Republicans somehow are okay with giving away tax money to farmers. And in many cases, as the Environmental Working Group has demonstrated with their research, big farmers. And yet they can't stomach the idea, no pun intended, of even a paltry $125 a month to a low income and or working person to help with food. It just boggles my mind. So Vilsack said the splitting off of the food stamp program from the Farm Bill was wrong, misguided, he called it. He says the program serves to a large degree, I have a little disagreement with this, military personnel, people with disabilities, and senior citizens, not welfare recipients looking to cheat the system. I have trouble with that because the implication there, he's pandering, I think, to the perception that welfare families cheat the system. Some of that happens. A little bit of that happens. When it happens, it tends to make news, and so you probably think there's more of it going on than there is. But I wish he wouldn't say that, because that just kind of, feeds into that whole stereotype. It could just as well be a military personnel or a senior or somebody with a disability who cheats the system. Again, the bottom line is 1% of every dollar, 1 cent, 1 penny of every food stamp dollar spent is done so fraudulently. So again, overall, I like what Vilsack had to say. I just differ with that one comment. He goes on to say that concerns over fraud are overblown, as we've said. He said the same fraud missteps are close to 10 times higher in the crop insurance program, but no one is talking about that. That's a really good point. I did not know that. I'm glad he brought that up. Again, again, House Republicans who love farm subsidies don't tend to talk about the fact. You didn't hear Steve King talking about the fact that 10%, 10 cents out of every dollar spent on crop subsidies is spent fraudulently versus 1 cent in the food stamp program. Vilsack goes on to say, do you want to tell these people who get food stamps that we're cutting their benefits? Do you want to tell them that they've got to work in order to get food assistance? Again, now, we want people to work, and most people want to work. But then he goes on, I like his punchiness, his feistiness on this. He says, what? Do you want children to work? He asked the disabled. Again, a big part of the percentage of people who are using food stamps, who benefit from it, are kids. Vilsack says the focus should be on looking at who could work a better job or a job and offering worker training to help them, not just beating up on them. So, again, tip of the cap to Tom Vilsack for the most part for coming out on the right side of that issue. Okay, so we're kind of a truncated version of this week's A New Beat on Learning. I would have liked to have had more guests to talk with me about this, but I do want to talk about one aspect of education, and that is student loans. We saw recently research or evidence, information revealed that the U.S. government is actually making $50 billion a year on student loan interest. That tells me that perhaps the loan rates are too high. Interestingly, $50 billion a year in profit to the U.S. government from student loans is more money than a lot of the big banks on Wall Street are making every year. Just to put it in perspective. A fascinating column by Robert Reich. Robert Reich, of course, the former U.S. Secretary of Labor, talks about how the Republican-led House passed a bill that tied student loan interest rates to the yield on the 10-year Treasury note, plus 2.5 percentage points. You know what? I'm not going to repeat that because that's hard to wrap one's mind around. The bottom line is it increases the amount of money students have to pay back on their student loans. In fact, Republicans themselves estimate that this would bring into the federal till $3.7 billion of extra revenue over a 10-year period. And that would help pay down the federal debt. Okay, wait a minute. It brings in $3.7 billion. At whose expense? Students? Their parents? I mean, gosh, kids are finishing with incredible debt already. I mean, Maddie, maybe you know how many, what the average debt is per student. I want to say it's $20,000-$30,000.
I could even see it going as high as 50,000 by the time you get your bachelor's degree, if not more. And that's if you go to a state university. And now if you're going out of state or if you're going private, I don't even want to try to think about it. It's just it's
sorry to have to make you think about it.
If you go to community colleges, and I'm talking about specifically DMAC, then it's not as bad. You might rack up a couple $1,000s in a couple years in loans if you get financial aid. If you don't get financial aid, what they give you is an unsubsidized loan, and then you get a higher interest rate. You're paying interest while you're in school.
Yeah.
And so it's even higher.
Well, congratulations, because if the House Republican proposal passes, you'll have to pay more.
Great.
Yeah, I just thought I'd break that to you.
Yeah.
All right. See, this show is full of good news. Well, actually, the good news is that this proposal does not even have a snowball's chance in you-know-where in the U.S. Senate. But, I mean, just to think about, just try to wrap your mind around how some of these people think. You know, again, it would bring in $3.7 billion of extra revenue, meaning students would have to fork out $3.7 billion more to pay off their student loans. Now, as Reich says, in other words, it's a tax, and one that hits lower income students and their families the hardest. Yeah, it is a tax. And this is from the Republicans who I always campaign against taxes. No more taxes. I mean, well, come on. You've just outed yourself for what you really are. You want no more taxes on your corporate buddies, on the very wealthy. And again, sometimes Democrats are just as bad. But that's really where this is coming from. This is no more taxes on people that we actually like. Okay, so meanwhile, this is fascinating too. Get this. Meanwhile, as Reich points out, a growing number of Republicans have signed a pledge co-sponsored by the Koch brothers. Yeah, the multi-billion-dollar billionaire Koch brothers, David and Charles, the folks who own that ethanol plant out here in western Des Moines that has caused the Xenia Water District to have tremendous financial problems because they're unwilling to pitch in and do their part. So the Koch brothers have got a large number of Republicans in Congress to sign a pledge opposing any, get it, climate change legislation that might raise government revenues by taxing polluters. Because we're against new taxes on polluters, but not on students. Okay, so this is officially known as the No Climate Tax Pledge, and the signatories, the U.S. members of Congress, the members of the U.S. Congress who signed it, promised to, quote, oppose any legislation relating to climate change that includes a net increase in government revenue. So in any way possible, they're going to, it is absolutely incredible to me, and I wish I had more time to talk about it, but we are out of time today on the Fallon Forum. Again, I want to thank folks listening on KHOI 89.1 FM in Ames. I want to thank the folks in Northeast Iowa, KPVL 89.1 FM there. And if you want to check out this program live, every Monday through Friday on www.fallonforum.com, you can live stream the show, and we have podcasts available afterwards. I want to thank all of our sponsors too, folks. I want to thank the Fighting Burrito. Fighting Burrito is in Ames, also in Des Moines, and one of my favorite places for a huge, tasty burrito at a very affordable cost. I want to thank Max Wellman and the Max Wellman Trio for providing music for this program. At some point, Maddie, my tongue stops working.
Can you handle it?
I can get us out.
Okay.
I want to thank Ritual Cafe, also Community CPA and Associates, Hawk Restaurant at East 5th and Walnut in the East Village, Dan Kelly's Real Estate Industry. I said industry and Dan Kelly. It's more like a family business. Check it out, though, if you want to buy or sell something in Newton. I again want to thank our organizational supporters, the Sierra Club, the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action. And thank you to Maddie Kane, my producer, to Webcast One Live for providing this studio, and of course to James Taylor. And yeah, you've got a friend.
If the sky high above you should go
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.